Welcome back to PSC Tech Pyth. Today we talk about how to manage and render information about files using the Microsoft Graph Toolkit. Specifically, I want to show you how to use the mgt-file component, which is really useful whenever you want to render a single file with an icon and with a set of predefined information, which is of course highly customizable. When you use the mgt-file component, you can define the query for the file you want to render. You can target a specific group or site ID with a list ID and item ID. If you want to target a specific file, you can configure the insights that you want to see. You can define the output based on one or multiple rows in the output and stuff like that. You can also customize the CSS and you can customize the template for rendering the output. So you can define a template for the loading UI, for the no data UI, and for the default rendering of a single file. Moreover, there is also the file list component. The mgt-file-list is useful whenever you want to render a list of files in a library or in a specific folder of OneDrive or of a group or of SharePoint Online. And again, we have plenty of properties that we can configure to target the list, library, or folder that we want to render in the mgt-file-list component. We can intercept the click event. We can, like always, customize the CSS as well as the rendering template. And again, for loading no data, for the whole list of files, or for a single file. So let me move to the demo environment and let me show you how to use these components in practice. So here we can see the file component in action. As you can see, the rendering by default provides the icon of a target file, the file name, when it was modified, and the size of the file. In order to get this result in our page, we simply need to use the mgt-file component. And for example, here we specify the file query property providing the URL, the relative URL of the file item in OneDrive based on the Microsoft Graph file item URL. Of course, we can play with this component. We can, for example, customize the view, and let's say that we want to see the 2 lines of view instead of the 3 lines, which is the default one. So if I go back to the page, we can see that now we have 2 lines. And we can also eventually customize the rendering template for this component. So we can say that the data type of the template that we want to render and to customize is the default one, for example. And just for the sake of having a look at the output that we can have through the component, we can just specify that we want to see the whole file object in the output. If I save this one, we can see the JSON that we get back from the mgt component. And if we go to the JSON viewer site, we can see that inside of the file object, we have information about the web URL, the name, all the date and time information about the file, and all the information about who created and last modified the file. So, for example, I can say that I want to customize this rendering with an anchor, and the href will be file dot, for example, web URL, and I want to use as the text of the link the file dot name. So if I will do that and I will save, here you can see that we easily have a link to the file in the rendering template. The same can be done with the file list component, where we see a list of files or folders inside a library rather than a single file. We can show more items and we can play with it. How? Well, again, mgt-file-list is the component name. By default, here I'm using a file list query property to define the children items of the root folder of the OneDrive of my user, again using the Microsoft Graph REST-based query syntax. And I can, for example, say again that I want to see, I don't know, 2 lines for the items, or that we want, let me do that, 2 lines, oops, 2 lines, that we want to have a page size of 5 items per page, and I can save and see the new output. But we can also, for example, provide a constraint about the file extension that we want to use. So file extensions, you see it is plural, because we can define multiple comma-separated extensions for files. And if I will do that, we will see just and only the docx and xslx files, if any. We can again customize the template. So I can say, for example, that I want a custom rendering template for data type. This time we can play with default again if we want to customize the whole output, and we can again, just for the sake of looking at the object that we get, define that we want to see the files object. And if I will do that, here is the JSON that we get back. I can copy all of it, okay, and we can one more time see the output in the JSON viewer. And as you can see, it is an array of files, and for every single file we still get the same information as before with the single file component. So for example, we can customize the rendering of a single file, and again we can say that we want to see an anchor with the href of the file, single file now, web URL, and we want to show the file.name as the text of the link. And if I save, again we can go back to the page and we can see that now we have a list of links. So, like always, really simple, really straightforward, but really powerful. Like always, thank you for watching this video. I hope you found it interesting, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you next week. And remember, subscribe to this channel. Thank you.